What's up, guys? You know what night it is. It is Tuesday night, cards and cake. My name is Brad, and I don't have any cake tonight. I didn't feel like it, but luckily, my guest, you know him as VegasFinds777. I know him as Chris because we have that relationship now. He's got a little bit of cake for both of us, and this guy is very fascinating. He sent me a story a while back, and he's been flipping his whole life. He's a professional poker player. And in this conversation, we're going to be talking about how we could use professional poker or playing poker professionally to help us with cards, because just like investing in cards, we have to know when to hold them, when to fold them, and just play for the next hand. And so without further ado, I want to say hi to you guys. JJ Bama, global sports card investor. Mike C, what's up, man? Cody Copas, Shelly, my token female. Thank you so much. David Hunter. And dude, this is going to be a great episode because Chris is a very entertaining guy. He's fascinating, but he's also very smart and has a lot of knowledge in not only sports cards, but in a lot of other really off-the-wall, unique industries. So Matt 14, Golden Boy, Stern, no carrot cake tonight. Wasn't feeling it. I'll get into it in a second. Panhandle cards, he's just like Dan Bilzerian. I think even cooler. Without further ado, let me bring him in. What's up, Chris? How you doing, man?
How's it going, man? Thanks for that introduction. That was very kind words. It's cooler than Dan Bilzerian. I mean, I think that's the pinnacle for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think Dan Bilzerian's in the cards just yet. So, I mean, I think that's where you got the lead.
I think you call that nerd stuff. You want to see the cake?
I want you to show the cake because, in fact, I want to remove myself from the.
Look at this. Look at this monster. This is insane. Look at, we got sprinkles. Look at that sheet cake. Oh, look at the design on the top. It's aerodynamic. There you have it, folks.
That was beautiful. Yeah, it was so impressive that I had to remove myself from my own stream just so that you and that cake had its own 10 seconds of glory right there. And I'm really impressed. What I was telling you guys, or what I was telling you, Chris, earlier, is that the reason I didn't feel like cake today is because of these damn cashews. Here's my learning lesson, guys. For one, if you're going to buy cashews, don't buy raw, because raw cashews taste like crunchy water. You're just going to keep trying to extract flavor from them. Only go with roasted. So I have like 5,000 calories of nothing tasty in my system. Ron Graziotti, slow, loud, Dan banging, Jason Breaks. What's going on? All right, I see all you guys there. I want to ask you, Chris, to get into your background because I want to talk about your background. I want to talk about strategy and also PSA and their updates and what that means for us investors and collectors and for the whole hobby. So why don't you just start with who you are and a bit of your background, because it's really fascinating.
I was born and raised in upstate New York, and I spent a lot of time with my great-grandmother. My mother was kind of off doing her thing. She was a bartender, a hairdresser, a biker, Hell's Angels type shit going on. And so I was alone a lot. And I used to ride my bike all over the place. And the local ice cream shop also had baseball cards. So I started getting into baseball cards right around the time I was 8 or 9 years old. And from there, over time, I just kind of got into Magic the Gathering because I was living with my mother down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And at that point, she had kicked me out when I was 16 because I had a green mohawk. I was playing drums in a bar band. And it was a bunch of nonsense. I didn't really deserve to be kicked out, but I could see it. So, I basically supported myself flipping Magic cards, winning local tournaments, being good at buying and selling. And even back in the day with the bike parts, I used to trade BMX bike parts. All the stuff I got was hand-me-downs for my friends. If I wanted Reebok pumps, I had to go trade somebody for them. So I've basically been flipping, trading my entire life. And then from Magic, a lot of my friends started to get money playing poker, and it used the same analytical mindset, the same sort of thought process, and just apply it to the mechanics of the poker game rather than something like Magic. So it was like Magic, but it had an uncapped potential. So there's a lot more money to be made in that arena. And then I dedicated myself to that, read all the books I could, and just spent basically every waking hour doing that, to the point where people started asking me to teach them how to play the game. I used to write articles for websites, and I started doing videos and teaching back in the mid-2000s. And it just kind of escalated from there until everything broke down around 2011 when, the government took over on Black Friday, smacked all the websites down, and everyone, basically everything fell apart.
Okay, wow, that's a lot to dig into. And
Yeah.
so when we were talking, you said that it was really you loved cards when you were a kid. You got into you had the background with Magic the Gathering, and then during COVID is when sports cards really vamped up for you. Can you go a bit into that?
Yeah, since I was always into collectibles, comic books, all that kind of stuff. And another thing with the Magic, I always played Dungeons and Dragons with my cousins. I was always the dungeon master, the guy like mapping everything out or whatever. So I've always just been interested in things from an analytical kind of standpoint. And when it came to all the collectibles, I was already buying some of that stuff on the side before COVID. It was kind of like a hobby, not doing it as much, just waiting for a good video game buy to come into my hands or something. Because I used to flip video games on eBay as well. So from there, COVID kind of took everything out, and I was already doing the collectible stuff, buying and selling on the side. It just took a bigger slice of the cake, so to speak, as poker dissipated, because playing live poker wasn't going to happen in Vegas. All the casinos shut down, and when they did try to do it, of course, they have the glass or the plexiglass like partition, and you have the masks and all that stuff. But my problem with that is simply that you're still using the same cards and chips as other people, so it's not really a thing. And I'm not a master at online MTTs. A lot of my friends are, but I was just a cash game guy, so it wasn't the same thing. And unbeknownst to me, at the same time that the Last Dance documentary was coming out, we would come across one of the best deals that I've ever found. And it's funny. So I went to buy a Raiders of the Lost Ark poster for $75, original poster. They go for about $250, something like that. And on that buy, to talk to the guy, who always, if you're buying stuff, always try to get everything you can from that person and anyone they know. So I made sure to ask that guy, do you have anything else for sale? Do you know anybody with other stuff for sale? That dude had a neighbor who was selling his vinyl record collection, which is the other main thing aside from sports cards that I deal with. So we went over to meet that guy, and he had a bunch of good records, Beatles, Pink Floyd, all original, and we paid him $5 a piece, which is more than normal. And he also had, because you always have to ask, he had sports cards. He's like, I got the first set of Fleer. Are you interested in that? And I was like, yeah, that's cool. And I knew it was good, but I didn't know how good, because The Last Dance, I didn't even know about it, even though it was kind of working up to it coming out. And he ended up having a full set of 86 Fleer, all the stickers, an extra Jordan, full set of 87 with an extra Jordan. And I told him that this card, if it was graded, could be worth a couple $1,000s, etc. So I told him I'm not like dishonest in that sense or trying to get it for $100 or whatever, but I offered him $200 for all the sports cards that he had. And because I figured we're already buying like $1,000 worth of records at $5 a piece, this is reasonable. We'll make some money. And when I say we, I mean my wife to be and I. And so just so you guys know, I don't have multiple.
Not your other personality. Not you.
Right.
Because
the
cake is big enough to be, considered its own entity. But okay, your wife, gotcha.
It's this guy right here, the dummy, that guy. So he ended up having all that stuff. We get it for $300. I offer him 200. He comes back with 300. Obviously, I'm going to do that deal, and it ended up being, after grading, $8,000 worth of cards. So at that point, other than the records, I was just going all in on sports cards full time, and I'm just going to dedicate my entirety to doing that. And of course, the biggest place to be buying the cards is eBay. So that's where I focused on before anything else.
Okay. A lot of questions entering my mind. Number one is, you're in Vegas, and I feel like Vegas is known for partying, gambling, and then pawn, and some sort of flipping and trading. Is that like a Vegas thing, to just buy stuff and sell it for more? Because aren't all those pawn-related shows out of Vegas?
They are, but if you go into those places, they're basically tourist traps. They have, like a Kobe Bryant picture that they've concocted on the wall with like a fake autograph for like $180, and then they have like a cardboard cutout of the dude that you can go to and you can take a picture with. So I mean, the sad reality of Vegas is that it's a very polarizing place. You have billionaires who are just spending tons on baccarat, driving around in limos. They got the highest priced prostitutes in the land. And then you have a bunch of people who've lost everything, people living in the sewers, tons of homeless people, people who are just, breaking even, and they're spending their excess money at the casinos trying to get ahead. And because of that culture, and also there's a fair amount of drug use around here, you get a lot of people who need to sell stuff at a good price. So unfortunately for them, there's a lot of leverage to be picked up. As sad as it might be, there's a lot of opportunity for buying stuff in Vegas.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been to Vegas a handful of times in the last year, and you stay in the tourist areas or you go out to the suburbs where the locals live, and that's one thing. But if you get off the strip or you just go a bit too far, it is scary. And you know, okay, you're that person that you just gambled a bit too much. You got on this one drug or you needed this one drug, and you see the extremes of like Ocean's 11, beautiful, like this is the life, to the exact opposite of everything went wrong.
It's like being
very, very interesting. Like, you know what's funny about the flipping though? I feel like LA is also a very good city for that because it's very transient, not in the same exact way, but in the way of people come out here for 6 months or a year, they try out acting, they do different things, and then they leave. So there's always a good amount of stuff to flip.
Right.
But what's really interests me is your background in poker, because you're a professional. I mean, like, you got paid for a living, and that was your full-time income. Is it still now considered full-time, or is it just completely scratched?
No, I haven't done stuff with poker full-time for a while. I mean, I still kind of piece together a little something here and there as opportunity would suggest, but for the most part, I'm basically just flipping.
I had to throw this comment up here. It's like the Kraft cheese, like from your sandwich when you're like 9 years old, that Kraft cheese, that all the fake coloring, all that stuff, just that's a good one there. So, okay, now what's cool about poker is that it's very strategic, and I'm like an analytical person. I like thinking strategy and all this. What kind of lessons either did you learn in poker that helped you with poker that you can now use in cards, or what similarities do you see that maybe you just have internally that you never had to develop, you're just talented at it, that at least someone else could use a mindset tip or something just to help them with sports card investing themselves?
Well, I would say that the biggest thing would be just your mental game, your thought process in general. So for instance, when I'm thinking about, or I'm doing research on who to buy or what to do, I'm looking, first of all, for a catalyst. I mean, that's one thing that playing strategy games will teach you, is that each game has individual mechanics of how that game works. And when you figure out what result you want from the game, how to win it, then you figure out what steps you can take, you model to get to that result more often than not. And the same thing happens in sports cards. So if the result is, I want to make money off of this card, why do I think I will? What is catalyst, and why will that catalyst move the market up or down, and then how do you take advantage and plan for that? So right now, one big one would be the Magic Johnson documentary that's supposedly coming out at some point next year. That's a catalyst. Or the Hall of Fame, if Chris Bosh and was Paul Pierce get in the Hall of Fame, picking up their cards cheap now and flipping them around that time would be good. And of course, they'll probably go right back down a bit after that. But just finding the catalyst and then knowing how to exploit that catalyst's effect would be one way, essentially, from poker. But it's just basically breaking things down to its core mechanics and then trying to achieve the result you want through the strategic thought process that goes with it. But there's a lot. There's really a lot.
Well, you also mentioned something, the core mechanics, as in there's an actual reason why this card should go up in value versus what I feel like what happened before. And it's probably a lot of people that are seeing the prices soften over the last month, which is the reason it'll go up in value is because it was worth less yesterday, rather than, okay, this guy will perform, or there's certain pieces in place that will help the team, that will help his notoriety, that, like, there's actual reasons. And one thing I believe that I try and apply myself, and this is just me, is I want multiple reasons. I want insurance policies. I want, okay, if you aren't better, is there a good chance that you have a better teammate coming in because your team has a big salary cap, a lot of salary cap space, or because you're well known off the courts or off the field, or something where I want 2 or 3 reasons for that card to go up in value, or at least maintain the value, versus if it doesn't pan out, if they don't win the championship right now and this guy scores 45 points and hits the game winner, I'm screwed. That's to me, the risk reward is way out of control. I need something that's like, is this low or is this high, hoping for higher? Because I like in anything, buy low, sell high. It's investing is as simple as that. However, I feel like a lot of people believe they're buying low when in actuality they're buying high, hoping for higher. But the room for it to go up is dependent just on one specific event happening in a very short time period. And that's just not the way I'm doing it. So that's a really cool lesson right there. Anything else that people can take from what you learned in terms of just, you said like reading, like you have to read people, you have to read the people you're playing against in poker.
Right. So
is it like calculating odds? Is it reading human behavior? What is it that you can take away from that?
Well, what I like to call the hive mind, who is somebody that is ready to make a decision at any point in time. You know what I mean? They're ready to buy cards based on news. So the thing that I would say is that anybody can react to news, but when that reaction requires a complex answer, then skill takes over. And when that reaction requires simplicity, then speed takes over. So if it's really difficult to capitalize on a market for one reason or another, then you're going to have to get into it, be smarter, and be ahead of people. But if it's just simple, like just go list your Jordans for a little bit of time, then simply, the speed takes over. Whoever gets there first gets that biggest slice of the pie. So that's another thing. And yeah, I mean, you could just go basically forever.
So what's okay, knowing all this and knowing your background, what is something that you're really intrigued about right now? And then the one question I really wanted to get to right here is, Michael, I went into the Clearwater show last time. I saw Boris from Hobby Box. I'm actually back in LA where they have very bumpy roads and where I can fall over and destroy my face. But okay, so we're talking about, Hall of Fame, enshrinements and different opportunities. Where the market's at right now, it's beginning of October. We got basketball almost ending. We got baseball entering playoffs. We got football in full swing. Hockey's over. What is, based on what you've learned since going all in, what is your strategy, let's just say, for October?
Well, just another quick word on the hive mind. So the hive mind, I like to think about, this kind of ties in. So I like to think about what other people are thinking, because in poker, you have to think about what your opponent thinks about the situation and then recognize what their patterns mean for them. So for instance, some people might have aces and make a really big bet because they want to get the most value and they love their hand. But then other people might make a really small bet because they don't want to scare you away. So in the poker world, you can capitalize on, or not poker, sports card world, you can capitalize on what the hive mind, the average person who's buying and selling, is going to do. So what are they going to do in October? What's important to them? Who are they going to focus on? And right now it's buying rookies for the next season. And that's in part what's happening. So I think that if you find rookies that are potentially overpriced versus what's going to happen, then you can sell into that hype of, I need to prepare for the next season. Who are people attracted to, and go that route, that, stuff that you got cheaper or whatever. Because I believe that, over time, these guys are not going to pop as often as they did, because first of all, in the bubble, you have very few games going every night. Next season, we're going to have games going every single night, and it's going to be a full slate of games. And then each individual performance is going to count for less, because it's not the playoffs, it's not about to be a championship, and not everybody's locked in for COVID. So if that's the case, then even an individual performance from a decent rookie is not going to garner as much attention or as much movement in cards. So I would much rather be saving maybe a few, getting stuff graded to the guys that I like, and then selling into the people who are preparing with cards I've already gotten cheaper. So I don't mind flipping in through October to people that are preparing. So that is one strategy we're using.
You bring up a couple of really good points, and adopting the mindset, or at least understanding the mindset of others out there, is clutch, because at the end of it, it's supply and demand.
That's
if
right.
someone scores 86 points in a game, but for some reason people don't like him, or they don't show that game on ESPN, and it's one of 15 games that happened that night, and they're like, oh yeah, he scored 86 points, that's great, which obviously they would show that, but then it really affects things. So I really go, okay, if someone has a highlight reel dunk and scores 4 points in a game, but that's going to be ESPN's top 10 #1 play, versus someone that's been scoring 26 or 30 points a game for the last 3 weeks, that person with the 360 dunk could very well see more of a spike in their cards than someone that's legitimately good. And
Absolutely.
so I always look at the ESPN app, I look at the headlines, and I try and go, okay, if I'm an investor or collector and I'm looking at the same scroll, what am I seeing? What pops out? Oh, someone is complaining they want to trade. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean exactly? If they get traded, what does the next string get elevated? Who would they be traded to? All these different things. Does their card go up or down because they want to trade? But at the end of it, it's other people that have to know about these scores, and we're not watching all the games. We might watch one game tonight or maybe two, but the majority is ESPN.com or Barstool or Fox Sports or whatever, where we're getting our highlights and we're getting all that, we're keeping up to date with it. So of that, what is going to be shown and what's the most exciting, and what I'd say also tickles our emotions. I don't think that's the right phrase, but what evokes emotions from it, where we go, oh man, I've got to buy in, I've got to sell, I've got to do something, versus someone that's very consistent and good, but that card might not be popping for a while. So you might actually have some buying opportunities because no one's recognizing consistent and good. Instead, everyone is all over that. Did you see that dunk? Did you see that fadeaway 3-pointer for the win, even though they're having a horrible season?
Right.
But I think that's
you're touching on a great point that also comes from poker, and that is emotional versus logical thinking. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of that. And I think just a mental awareness, like when you're inside your head, but you can also step outside and you can be the angel and the devil on your own shoulders. It's really important to understand when you're thinking logically, when you're thinking emotionally, because if everybody just thought logically, life would be a lot more difficult because everybody would be making good decisions all the time. Yeah. It's when emotion comes in that people make mistakes. Casinos want you emotional. When you are playing high stakes poker at a table full of all winning good players, whoever gets emotional over a hand, whoever loses their mental edge is going to become the fish in the game. And that's who people are going to get to bleed money to them, essentially. Same thing in the sports card market. It's just a give and take, a push and pull. If I have this card and its value is $10 and then you emotionally buy it for 25, I've accrued nice 15 value that I didn't have to get unless you were emotional. So when you're talking about dunks and ESPN, it's just attention that makes people emotional rather than logical. So being aware, stopping, slowing down, and asking yourself before you click those buttons, that's a very good thing to do.
And I think that's what's exciting about sports cards, because if you're in the stock market, the amount of people that are logical versus emotional, I'm sure there's that the ratio is in favor of logical in the stock market, even though there's people that are emotional and they make dumb moves. But sports cards are very emotional because sports are tied to our identity. This is my team. This is my player. And so we invest or collect with our hearts. But when we're able to at least acknowledge, okay, am I excited about this because this makes logical sense? Or am I excited about this because it riles me up some way?
I don't care.
It's like, yo, stop, sleep on it. The next day when the news is over, when you could breathe, all of a sudden, let me look at the numbers. Let me weigh the pros and cons. Let me do that. And that's just the way I'm wired too. So analytical and logical is way more of my wheelhouse, where emotional, I'm like, look, here's an example. I want a Tom Brady Buccaneers jersey. I'd like one. I can't buy one because it's not on sale. I have to wait till the end of the season to justify buying it, because I say that's probably another $50 extra that could go towards cards that could actually make me $150 in 6 months' time, that would buy the jersey with that profit, versus buying it now and then for letting go of not only that $50, but all the money the $50 would have made if I had a good formula behind it. So
I call that being a man of value. That's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I think that brings up a good point too, because everyone's like, well, what about this player? What about this player? And my answer is, what's the price you're paying, right? Like, it's literally, dude, you give me a Ryan Leaf RPA, I will buy it, but I'm only paying $2. I buy it for $2. I bet I can get rid of that card at some point for $20, and that would be worth it. If it's a $150 card of Ryan Leaf, even if it's one of one, I'm like, no, I got better things to invest in. But it's never just about the player. It's really what is on sale, what is a great value, and the likelihood of it going up, and how long of time, and what's the downside of it. Can it drop below that price? What are the odds of it dropping below? And it's always that game of like up, down, left, right. Where is that sweet spot where it's good to take a risk here versus a risk there?
And that ties into poker too with something called implied odds, where you call a bet with a pair, hoping to flop a third one of that pair, hoping your opponent has top pair, and then you get a bunch of money. So, in the game, it's like I didn't buy a bunch of Prism quarterback football rookies because the price was too high. It was like $70 even for a guy like Daniel Jones. And I'm like, what in the living hell is this? But I could get a couple of running backs. I picked up a ton of Amari Cooper cards, and I made great bank on Tyler Lockett at like $5 a piece. Then I'm out the door at 15 to 25 all day. So you have better implied odds, and it also allows you to diversify easier. If you have a bank, and I suggest you guys keep your bankroll for sports cards separate to help you track wins and losses. Let's say you got $1,000. You don't want to spend $700 on quarterbacks because they're high risk. When that quarterback sucks, that card could easily go to $10. But if you bought a bunch of running backs and you had just even some subpar guys like Tevin Coleman that didn't work out, you paid a couple bucks or whatever, you're going to make more money than if you had bought those quarterbacks. The ones that tanked are going to kill you. So implied odds really matters. Getting it at a good price versus what could be is very important.
Yeah, it's the weighing upside and downside, and that's why in my last video going over September sales, it was literally people were giving me a hard time about Dwight Howard, but I was buying his Topps Chrome rookie cards for $3.80. Right, I don't expect them to be $300 cards, but at that price, remember, like the lower it is, for that to double and triple and quadruple, you're not asking for much.
You're not asking
for a couple clicks of a button versus, well, I had to get it in the mail and then I had to open it, then I had to unpackage it, and then I had to repackage it and then send it out. That's one thing. But that's also why, buying a LeBron card that's overpriced at the time is not as good as buying an underpriced someone else like Dwight Howard, because I can make profit. And then I'll buy a LeBron after the finals, whether he wins or loses, whenever that next dip is. But it's not an easy answer. And so like you have to have some level of, if you want to maximize it, some level of understanding of value. Because Zion was a perfect example. When every 16-year-old to 22-year-old is all over a certain player or card, that is a good rule of thumb to sell the shit out of that card.
Sell the hell out of it and don't buy it. Just save it, sell it. All of the tight ones.
Yeah. And so like I didn't buy a single Zion throughout all of the whole season. And then only in the last month, I'm like, wow, that's a third of the price. That's half of the price of what it peaked at. And so if it's at a third of the price, I'm comfortable just off of the preseason hype that it'll go up from there. And then if he actually does anything or loses some weight, whatever, it'll be a healthy profit. But I think with that whole analysis of emotion, the one term that stands out is the cool factor. What cards are cool? Because cool is all emotion. Cool is not logical. So if a player is cool, Tyler Hero is doing great right now. And but you look at the headlines, I'm like, dude, you have a snarl, but you didn't have a great game. And Anthony Davis and LeBron, like they didn't have good games. If he balls out tonight, that's one thing, but he's a cool player right now, but that's too dangerous. That's an easy sell for me because again, the odds are way too high that he won't hit a game-winning three with 40 points in the game tonight. And then, and even if he does, that's your one little window to sell because the odds of him doing it again is pretty damn low versus someone that's guaranteed but underpriced.
You know who I think's in a dangerous spot in the mid to long term, and this is probably going to be more of a contrarian thought process, but I think Kawhi Leonard is in kind of a dangerous spot. First of all, his championships came from the Raptors on a year where LeBron didn't have a good year. That was when he missed 27 games. He wasn't the LeBron that we all know, so LeBron wasn't a factor, and he won with the Raptors. And his other championship was with the Spurs, which featured Tim Duncan. So, he had an amazing team the first time, a lacking of LeBron the second time, and then obviously this time the Clippers fell apart. So it's really uncertain times for Kawhi Leonard. And let's say he doesn't come out of that and he never, expands beyond what he's already done. His cards could easily just kind of slowly taper off and never go back up.
And there's a question, I think it was Global Sports Card Investor asked, which is, what do you think of players with big social media following? And that goes a bit into Kawhi Leonard because I watch him play. His face does not move. He's like Mona Lisa. It's just like, and when we watch athletes and we see the snarl, we see the chest bumps, we see the screams, we see that it's a part of us. It's like, dude, you're human. You're showing emotion. And I think any player that doesn't have that emotional connection, there's a disconnect. There's like, okay, you're great. You're putting the basketball in the hoop. You're scoring this amount of points, but when you look at a card, it's just Okay, I don't feel anything. And that was the whole reason why I think Tom Brady, even though he's amazing, that's an easy investment from, dude, you're the man. Like, I want to live vicariously through you. Rob Gronkowski, dude, you're having fun, man. You're like a 12-year-old kid in a 2-year-old man beast body. But like, that was the reason I invested in Gronk before he joined the Bucks, before I even knew about it, because I was like, dude, you're fun, man. I look at your card and I think, dude, you remind me of what I wanted to be like in college. Just party all the time. You know, he's like, I don't know. I think he had a porn star with a jersey on it, on her, just covering her. But like cool experiences that most of us won't have. And I think that's where the social media following, how liked they are, really does matter more and more now, perhaps compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago. But if the Kawhi Leonard was as good as Michael Jordan, but didn't have the Jordan swagger, didn't have the endorsements, didn't have the movie, just didn't have that I want to be like Mike brand, I don't think he'd still be nearly as close as Jordan in terms of just collectability or likability. But one thing I want to get to before we go into questions here, I really wanted to talk about PSA. And you made a really great video on, so you guys, if you haven't seen Chris's video on the PSA update, definitely check that out afterwards. But your initial thoughts and the different ways that it can go, because PSA has drastically changed their operations as well as their pricing structure and what that means. Like, what exactly does that mean for us as well as other grading companies out there? Are we going to be more open to it, or is there a second, the second place company like SGC or BGS that's going to take market share? So why don't you really quickly recap your thoughts as to what PSA is doing and what direction you think it'll take the whole hobby?
Well, at the base of everything, you have way too much demand for a product, meaning a graded card that we can then sell or enjoy as much as you enjoy those personalities on social media. And you have a problem where the companies that are doing it, the three main companies of BGS, SGC, PSA, they don't have the capacity to handle the demand. It way overflows it. So in that sense, they don't have trust outside of those three companies. There's no trust. And that's really what the problem is that you want to get the cards graded, but you need the trust of the market to get the price that you want. Otherwise, it's not worth the cost. I mean, if you can pay $10 or $20 to get a card graded, wait 4 months, and then get 8 times your money, that's a good return. But if you're going to get 2 times your money, you're probably going to do something else. So we have a beautiful market situation. Getting cards graded is a lot of fun. It's great to hunt for vintage cards that are, get them graded, rookies, whatever. But at the end of it all, you have three main companies. They're completely overflowed, and they need to expand beyond, obviously, the demand. So you have to find a way for them to do that, which is going to be difficult. And what PSA has essentially done is taken away the middle guy. They've taken away the economy ability to send it in at the $20 level and get it back faster than bulk. Now, we could all send bulk if declared value wasn't in the way. So if you want to do a bulk submission to PSA, they cap you out at $99, which is very ambiguous, because is it $99 after it's graded currently in the market, or is it $99 when I sent it in 8,000 years ago? You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's a lot that plays into it.
And there's a good chance that it'll go up past 99 and then back down before they even get to it. So it's like, it depends on the date. Like any rookie card during NBA season has that chance of being like, it was over $100 at this one day. Did you grade it that day and then send it back? And then by the time it gets back to me, he tears his ACL and it's a $30 card.
Yes, and at the core of it, I understand that they want more money if they're going to grade a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle versus like a 2014 Mookie Betts rookie. I get it. There's a difference between those cards, and there should be some sort of an upcharge. But they shouldn't leave that to the consumer. I mean, to have somebody, let's say, I do this all the time, day in and day out. You guys are sports card investors. You guys are on the scene. So we're going to have more knowledge than the average person that wants to get their cards graded. So many people want to get their cards graded, but they don't know anything about it, and they're scared of the process because they don't want to mess anything up. So when you have this, and they're like, declared value, how do I handle that? How many mistakes are being made on declared value? So many people overvalue their cards. They look at it, it's got a big bend in it, looks like the damn Hamburglar had it in his back pocket, and they're still trying to get 5 times market cap for a Gem Mint 10. And you just have that so much. It's just like, you guys, you need a process that is cleaner for the average user. And as far as the market desirability, we need trust. So look at a company like GMA. They're basically like stale cereal. You know, they're just like, that's the generic cereal. It comes to you stale. You open the box, disgusting.
Dude, it's the bag of cereal. Not even the box of cereal. It's the bag of cereal.
They are the crunchy water cashews of the grading world. So you see their case and you don't like it. I mean, they could probably triple their throughput if they just changed their grading case. So then you didn't know who it was. What? That's GMA right there. Well, damn, she looks good today. So, I mean, there's room in the market because the demand is there. So what we need is someone to step up and gain the trust of the people that can handle it. And PSA's best thing they could do would be to buy GMA, train the guys that are making mistakes, and just say, look, you're screwing this up, fix this, and you're already a good grader. So find the fastest way that you can expand to handle the market demand, and then clean up the issues like declared value, which screws people up and, you know, confuses the average user.
Yeah, and I will say this, you know, when you think of cards and you think of the amount of technology that is in this hobby now versus in the 90s, and I'm like, wow, I literally bought cards with a few clicks of a mouse. It's stored remotely. I sold it digitally. Everything is so up to date. We're like getting there. And then you think of grading and it's like, this is so antiquated. This is literally the same process as 20 years ago in a brand new hobby, in a time where technology has taken over and made things so simple. And like, just like Global Sports Card Investor has here, technology taking over. And I was thinking to myself, apps, some sort of scanning device. What I would like, this was a thought that came to my mind not long ago, which is I would love for either PSA or another company to make partnerships with local card shops where they have another income stream, where they have a device, they have a machine where you could put in the card, it scans it, and you put it back in the top loader with like one of those little don't break seals with a grade. And it's a grade of a raw card. And at least that way it presents some sort of value. Maybe it's not like, look, it'll be this grade if it goes to PSA type of thing. Obviously, there's probably holes in that theory, but something where it could be $2, $3 a card. It'd be very quick because, you know, it's like in football games, they have instant replay. They use technology to miss all the calls that a human eye makes because, you know, it's sometimes pitching a perfect game and then the umpire makes a wrong call, or pass interference is there and it wasn't called. That can throw off a whole game, which could throw off a whole season. And so if you have technology at your disposal, I don't know what these companies are doing. And I don't know if they're romanticizing the way it was. Like, we love grading by hand. Well, what I love is accuracy. I love things actually being done the way it should. And that means that just because you want to stick to the way it was and try and make it work this way, I'm rooting for that company that's in someone's garage right now that's like, dude, we can literally have this amazing device that reads the surface, the corners, everything, and it will give a grade from 0 to 100, and it'll just be a seal that someone authorized puts over a top loader, and at least you could sell your card raw with this grade that could then at a future date be translated into the same grade at PSA or somewhere. So, I mean, that's like just a theory, but technology has got to, because it's going to happen at some point. I'm hoping sooner than later. But in terms of trust, I think that's the problem, is that GMA, HMA, VMA awards, all these companies, I don't know what they are. All these companies, they want credibility, they want trustworthiness, but that takes a lot of time. And the only way to speed that up, in my opinion, is if they partnered with PSA, if they get bought out. If Gary Vaynerchuk says, I am buying GMA, and I'm gonna pump GMA, and I'm gonna make sure that this is the best company, all of a sudden you get more people opening their eyes to these other companies. If not, good luck. You better do something big, but it's gonna take a long time.
And that's the problem. And that's what I'm saying. You know, if you can't figure it out between those three companies how to handle the demand, something is going to come in and disrupt that. Now, it would be great to have scanning technology, but there's probably going to be some issues with that as well, because there are, for vintage cards at least, you know, touch-ups and all kinds of weird stuff. It would be you would need some sort of an exquisite scanner to catch everything that can go wrong with those cards, especially for vintage. So I mean, there's a number of different solutions, and that's, again, part of being a poker player, part of looking at markets, investing in cards, is just modeling out what the possibilities are and then hitting the likely versus less likely more often than not to succeed. Yeah. So, I mean, they'll figure it out eventually, but right now, getting rid of economy is kind of dumb, considering that they're allowing us to, basically, we're paying $5 for them to put the work on some of these other companies that do group submissions. And I don't really like it. I mean, I'm going to try it, but I'm not really a fan of sending my card to somebody else to have them send it to PSA and charge me an extra $5 to do it. Yeah. I don't like it.
Yeah, I saw on PSA's site, they have a directory of partners. Right. And I went into one of them, and one of them is I think like 25 miles away from me, which is weird because I thought my card shop here in LA that I did the PSA submission with would be on that list, and they're not. Right. So I'm not exactly sure about that process. And so what, when you read it, does that just mean it's going to be a bit quicker of a process because they're a trusted partner? They'll expedite that process a bit. They'll get a little cut in line type of thing?
Now, when I was doing research for my video, and I went and I found their authorized dealers, and then you click the group submission, the list of dealers that comes up, I mean, half of them don't even have enough information on their site. A couple of them are like a Facebook page. Like I said, one guy was advertising religion. There was just all kinds of weird stuff in there, and it just kind of looks like the Wild West, like they haven't paid attention to it because they haven't made it official and they haven't given it a hard criteria. The criteria basically is you need to pass a background check, your employees need to pass background checks, and you have to have submitted $5,000 worth of cards to PSA. At that handle, most of us could be an authorized PSA dealer and take group submissions. So, I mean, to me, it needs to be a clear and cleaner process than what it is, and hopefully they'll hammer that out. I'm not saying that PSA is messing up in this sense because they probably haven't needed to, to go through and clean it up and make it clear. But now, with this change, that is going to be a necessity. So, all those sites need to be updated if people are actually doing group submissions. It needs to be available on the site for the consumer so they can know what they're doing when they go to it.
Yeah, and I see a lot of comments here about technology, and it's like, it's not realistic, it's more optimistic. I feel like technology being involved in one way, period, it needs to happen. Just even if it's in PSA's offices where they use something that expedites their process, something happens where the turnaround times are better, just because we're not in a realm of reasonable. We're in a realm of like, holy shit, this is really the best that can be done. Right. In terms of the other grading companies, the one thing that stuck out to me is, okay, if PSA is going to raise their prices, if they can't expand so much, or they don't want to expand so much to keep the prices where they're at, because maybe they just want to say, like, look, we want to be the status of #1, and we want to take those higher end cards. We don't want to bother with all this lower end stuff, these base cards. But if you're going to send it to us, then we will take longer and we'll charge you more and we'll do that kind of stuff. But we really want those $1,000, $2,000 cards. Send those our way. And, it's going to be well worth the $50 or whatever, but we don't want to be overwhelmed and expand. And I actually, now that I think about it from PSA's standpoint, you wouldn't want to expand and have a new office, have 50 more employees for a bunch of base cards. Yes. or lower end cards if the people in the hobby with those cards are only in it for 6 months or a year, and you're not exactly sure about the longevity. So I understand of being like, okay, how can we control supply and demand on our end and make it a bit more exclusive and a bit higher end? But who does this help the most in terms of the other companies? Is there like, do you feel like SGC or BGS or someone else can benefit from this?
I think that BGS is probably in the best position simply because people like the subgrades, and Beckett Magazine has been around since the dawn of time. I think that SGC has benefited the most because of the sub-hype that we had for a while there. SGC is the next thing, and black cases being a big part of that. There's got to be more than just the black cases. But at the end of the day, the market only wants two things. They want efficiency on the grade, and they want to be able to trust that the grade is accurate, and they will pay. If somebody came out like Gary Vee and said, this GMA company has done wonders, they've improved, they're way better than a used car dealership, you guys should use GMA. Suddenly, GMA's doors would be blown off, So if this
Yeah.
trust is more important than anything else, and for somebody to capitalize, they're going to have to gain the trust from an outside those three perspective. But I mean, I don't know what else the other ones can do other than expand some percentage. I mean, the best thing that you could do, I mean, I wouldn't say best, but you could stop grading newer cards for a while. I mean, until you figured it out. I mean, that sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing you could do. If the problem is, I mean, everything in life is problem, solution, logical, emotional. So if the problem is we have too many cards to grade, where is it coming from? Oh, the vintage cards only are 30%, and then the modern 2019 Prisms are like 70%, of the problem. Then that's clear. Stop grading them or price them high enough that everybody isn't grading a Spencer Dinwiddie base card. You know what I mean? Just you got to limit it somehow. So if they look at the wall of $25 to grade one of these 2019 base dummies that isn't LeBron, then they're going to think twice about it. So you have to limit it some way. You can have your prices scaled based on that demand. So the ones that are worth grading, you're still going to get. So, I mean, it's up to them to sort of mitigate it and figure that out. And I think they could do a slightly better job of it.
Yeah. And the way I see it too is also, I think the sale of raw cards and the acceptance of raw cards are just going to be a reality for a bit longer, where I've been buying a lot of raw cards. But maybe just the idea of, all right, if I just sell raw cards, if I buy raw cards, there's better procedures on eBay, there's better quality pictures, there's things like that. Because I just like the idea of, look, I don't have to grade it now. I could wait. I can see how I feel. I could always sell it raw. Like, it's not like, I mean, some people are graded only, but if it's a good card, and it's a good quality picture, no one's like stopping you from selling a raw card. It's just, there is like a huge push with graded cards. But if it's going to cost $15 and 6 months, 8 months, whatever amount of time, again, you're locking that card up and you're not being able to sell it for that long to hopefully get a good grade, to hopefully sell it at a profit, when if that guy spikes within that 6 months, that could have been your window to sell at raw.
Exactly.
And make way more profit than when it comes back a 9. And now, I got this 9 slab. I'll sell it to you for $15 more than what I paid for it, because now it's a 9.
That's a game. That's a game in and of itself, trying to predict where the market will be when you're likely to get your card back, and how that'll affect the guys that you're sending in.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of guesswork, because it's what grades am I getting? What time am I getting it back? What if I could sell it in sooner? I could be rolling that money over into something else that's underpriced, but instead I have these cards and whatever I paid for them locked up in capital. And then I also got to remember to pay for the actual cards when I get them back. So I have to tie that up as well. So yeah, the more I see it, the more I feel better about just going with raw cards, or cards that are 5 years or older, cards that I already have a good idea what the pop report would be, just because I don't want to assume that of the 1.5 million cards that PSA had backlogged, that there's 15,000 or 10,000 or whatever of my card there. But hey, eBay says low pop report of only 156, because there's 6,000 about to be shipped back out.
Exactly. And I made a video a while ago and I said, don't buy Michael Jordan cards, don't invest in them right now. And I wasn't talking about the rookie and the rookie sticker. I was talking about all these 90s base cards that everybody's paying $200 for in a 9 or a 10 or whatever, because those are going to get slammed. And PSA had a deal where you could grade 25 Jordans for like $9 or $8 a piece or something. And when that wall just falls over, suddenly those are going to be $60 PSA 10s in the market. So investing them was kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's a tricky game.
It's a shit show right now. It's a shit show, but I think it's an exciting shit show, because it's the good type of shit show. It's people coming in, and this is what I mentioned to you earlier, and I had a post in my community feed where, there was this fear of people are getting out of the hobby, and because money was or the prices were going down from August, which was just insane. Right. And flippers are losing interest, they're losing money, whatnot. And then I just saw, and if you guys haven't seen already, Steve Aoki and DJ Ski just opened a card shop in the middle of Hollywood here in LA, about a mile away from me. And Logan Paul had posted something about his $200,000 investment in Pokemon cards. And so people with way bigger platforms than anyone in this arena, except for, let's say, Gary Vaynerchuk, are now putting out their cards and opening shops. This is the second new card shop in LA in about 2 months. And that I know of. There might be a third or a fourth. So in terms of, is the hobby slowing down or plateauing? I don't believe so at all. I believe that first wave, that first surge has simmered. But
Yes.
now I just think it's getting more and more mainstream versus just, hey, I'm a fan of Gary Vee and he talked about it, or I used to do it and so I'm getting back in. Now it's, hey, what is this? Tell me more. And now you're going to, who knows how big it's going to be, but I don't think it's slowing down at all. What's your take on that?
I think that COVID and the unemployment funds had a lot to do with the initial burst because people were stuck at home and they had all this money floating around and they were like, okay, what am I going to do with this? And they got back into stuff that they liked when they were younger because everything is cyclical. And as you get older, you look to things that made you happy as a kid. And right now we're coming to the time when people that are now my age, I'm 41, and Magic the Gathering and Pokemon is getting a lot of attention because those people are getting better jobs, they're settling into their careers, their lives, kids, etc. They want to share that with their kids, the enjoyment that they had. Video game systems like Atari, Nintendo, I mean, all that stuff has just gone up over time. So when you see the COVID lockdown, people are bored out of their minds. They got more money than they know what to do with. They spend a bunch on cars. They don't care what they're spending, so the value goes crazy. And now they're not done. They haven't left. It's not like they enjoyed it and they're out. It wasn't like they went to a restaurant and now they're done. They're going to eat again. They're going to it's going to slowly creep up. Like I said, we're going to see good long-term investments because if people are going to expand the market, everybody's like, oh, you're into the cards? Oh, man, that's dope. Guys like Steve Aoki, guys like Gary. I mean, it's just going to continue going. I mean, now we've got a bustling YouTube community full of content creators. I mean, it's just going to keep spreading, and the market should just keep rising slowly over time as the dollar plummets as well. But that's a whole other story. But I mean, you just have to be careful not to get too involved with cards that are high risk. I mean, that's the biggest thing. If you're investing a ton in like a rookie patch auto of like RJ Barrett and you spent $800 on it and you bought like 5 of them or something, and RJ Barrett might very well suck. What has he done? He hasn't proved anything. It's just hype. He's living off the hype. I mean, he might just be a great player. We also have to think about those other variables. How is he going to expand into the Knicks getting to the playoffs or the Knicks getting to the Western Conference Final or Eastern Conference Finals, rather? So you have to kind of go one step further and not get too involved at high-risk situations.
Yeah, and I feel like with your background in poker and then just being able to analyze the moment and then step out of it and say, this is a moment of time right here. RJ Barrett, you're doing great, blah, 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 you're hyped, whatever. Jermaine O'Neal, how many Jermaine O'Neal collectors are out there? He was a pretty good player. Like, there's a lot of good players. There's a lot of like really good players. Antoine Walker, I remember like there's some hype around him. Like, he was a pretty decent player back in the day. But the point is that in that moment, understand you're in the moment. You're in that moment of time. Long term, it doesn't make sense. But also, if you want to buy an $800 RJ Barrett RPA, percentage wise, I hope that's extremely low in terms of your whole budget. That would be the high risk 10 to 20% of your portfolio, while the others are okay, good chances of making the Hall of Fame already, 5 years left in your career on an up and coming team, things that actually make sense versus I'm going to pay a lot because there's an article written about something. But and I feel like that first wave was a lot more speculative than merit based. It was, because it's like, look, the bubble's going to happen and everyone is a huge target because no one has sucked yet. Kind of like NFL, we're seeing injuries. We're seeing so many injuries and great players. Chris Godwin, great player on paper. It was great. Hopefully he comes back from his injury and does well. I was happy to sell a lot of Godwins before the season started because I'm like, dude, I don't know if you can be as good as people believe you're going to be. Like at the prices you're at, you have to score 2 touchdowns and get 150 yards receiving per game just to keep up with those prices. So, whatever it is, like, I think both of our goals here is just that whoever is in this hobby, you're getting what you want from it and that you're responsible long-term, because it sucks to lose money and it sucks to not have fun. And when you lose money, it's a lot less fun. So if you're spending money and enjoying it, that's cool. But if you want to break even or make some money, it's got to be based off of principles versus just speculation, but sometimes deciphering between merit and hype, and like where the hype is usually from merit. Hype is like, you should be really good because you were really good in college, or you were really good in the past, or something, and then merit. So I mean, that was a bit of a
like Russell Wilson is merit and Tyler Lockett is hype. You know what I mean? And I think we've seen a correlation, or at least I have in some eBay sales, is that when a quarterback has a lot of attention on him, whoever does a lot of work with him, that is who you can sell. Those cards will go. Like I sold like 5 or 8 Tyler Lockett Prism rookies after they had that good game the other. I don't know who they were playing against, but they might have. Wasn't the Raiders? I don't know. Anyway, last week, week 3.
Yeah, but even someone here, Russell Wilson as well. It was just. I remember there were. I think that's the cool thing is when you read the headlines and you see article after article after article on Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Luka Doncic, Zion Williamson, and Luka's great. I was very impressed. But when you see so much attention there, you know it's not undervalued. Even if they're great, it's not undervalued. So the opportunity is where the headlines aren't just yet. But then they play well, and then the headlines: Russell Wilson for MVP. Da 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 da. But the point is still that's where I like to look in terms of if everyone is buying up someone because of either merit or hype, but everyone is focused on a few players. I know that the number is just getting pumped higher and higher. Exactly. I want, who's that second, third, fourth place guy? A fraction of the attention, but the majority of the merit. Like a lot, like really good, but just why is no one talking about him? Like if I have to ask myself, why isn't anyone talking about him? Then it's a good sign to go further.
And you can also think about when they will be talking about him, because obviously there will be a catalyst for that card or that person at some point in the future. Otherwise, you wouldn't be picking them up, the whole market moving itself. And I think that vintage cards are just going to continue getting more and more attention over time. And I think those are cards that you definitely want to focus on, especially finding ones in really good condition, whether it's baseball. I mean, there's a ton. Like today, I picked up an Eddie Murray rookie card in excellent condition. I'm going to send it in for grading for $15. So one thing I like to do, just as a quick little aside here, I bring up a bunch of tabs. I have like 20 browser tabs open with a bunch of different searches, and then I have them all buy it now, newly listed, and I camp searches. So if I'm looking for that Magic Johnson 2012 Prism card I talked about, that thing is like off the charts now. It's like people forgot about it. I'll just keep clicking throughout the day, buy it now, newly listed, and hopefully, and sometimes you find a really good deal before anybody else does. So I just do that and flip through the tabs, tab by tab, for everything that I want to search for.
Is there not a program that'll do that? I mean, because you have the saved searches, but that's a daily thing on eBay.
Yeah. No, I just have a tab open. I just leave it off on my other monitor and bring it up in the morning and just look through and see what cards have been listed, what auctions are going, and just hit those buy it now, newly listed as often as possible.
Yeah, there's definitely opportunities like that. But just like that Magic Johnson card, not many people would think of that card, which is all at first. And I saw that same thing with a Kobe Bryant 2012-2013 Crusade card. If you remember that set, Crusade, the angel wings.
Yeah,
and that was a card I go, holy shit, this is a spectacular card. And it's incidental because it has the wings. Obviously, he's an angel, in heaven. There's all these angel Kobe murals all over the city here, and I'm sure all over the country. But it was one of those cards that just caught my eye. But then every time I could buy it for $8 or $10, I would just try and buy it. And then the last auction I saw, because very few people are selling it, went up to $86 for a regular base card. But it was just one of those things where you spot it, and if it's special to you, then there's a good chance it's special to 5% of other collectors out there. If something about the card just strikes you for some reason, I think that's just a good sign to like look further into it and say, what is it about this card that is so special? It's almost 6 o'clock. We've been rambling phenomenally well. Got to say, like, kudos. You're a great talker, great rambler.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Always full. You're merit, no hype. That's what I like about you.
Merit.
Let's do this real quick though, because I know it's 6. I usually end on an hour, but we haven't. Yeah, you got your cake. I got to go to the grocery store and get some cake. Just I feel bad that all I have is an empty bag of raw cashews, which I hope
crunchy water, man. Crunchy water.
Dude, I'm telling you, if you're just hopping on, raw cashews are horrible. You got to get roasted. Raw cashews have no flavor. And so, I just ate the whole bag searching for a flavor, kind of like ripping wax, searching for a special card like a rare insert, and instead I'm just left with nutless, nutless.
Nutless.
Let's answer a couple questions though, and I definitely want to get your perspective on questions. So if you have a couple questions before we hop off, let us know. We're going to try and go through as many as possible for the next 5 or 10 minutes. And while you guys put in a few questions, where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at VegasFinds777. Same thing on YouTube. And I also stream on Twitch TV sometimes as Ming the Merciless 93. So Twitter, I'm very active. Obviously, I post a couple YouTube videos a week. Those are the main places that you'll find me.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, we got one question here. Well, JJ, it is a 2012-2013 Panini Crusade. That's the card. It's a beautiful card. John, thoughts on CGC? I don't know CGC unless you mean SGC. What's
CGC is a comic book grading company. They're like the PSA of the comic book grading world, and they've recently gotten into grading cards, but they're basically grading Pokemon and Magic cards. They haven't started with sports cards yet, and they are trying to. I actually have some comic books being graded at CGC right now. But yeah, their holder looks good. It looks very clean. It looks just like a mini version of their comic books, and they already have the trust as far as the comic book world goes. So CGC could definitely get some market share if they started doing sports cards, and they could get some trust with that. They definitely will have trust with Pokemon and with Magic, but I don't know if they can get trust for sports cards because they're a comic book grading company.
Yeah, and I don't know the percentage of people going from comics to sports cards or that are doing both, because just myself, I've never heard of them. I thought it was an SGC thing. So I'm sure there's some overlap. I just don't know if that's going to be enough. If comic to this is enough, because I think Beckett, just the name BGS, Beckett, at least you have that head start in terms of a name. Good question by Adam. What is going to happen to already existing PSA 9s of cheaper base cards? Are they going to go up because pop reports might stay on the lower side? What's your take on this one?
I would say it really just kind of depends on the demand of that player. Everything is going to boil down to demand. I mean, Marcus Allen's rookie card, 1983 Topps Football, is a great example. It's a vintage card, and you think the 9 would be close to the 10, which is worth about $600. But if you look at the pop report, the 9 has like thousands, and it goes for $60, which is like a 10-to-1 split. And that normally doesn't happen unless it's a raw card. Like if you have a PSA 10, a lot of the times there's about a 10-to-1 ratio to a raw card, unless it's a Prism, which Gem 10s a little bit more often. So it really just kind of depends on demand of that player and, of course, that pop report. And when pop reports are a little bit misleading because you have to think about all the cards that are going through. And that's why I like vintage. A vintage card is not going to have 70,000 people lined up at the door, but a 2017 Bellinger rookie is going to have that because it's so accessible and so many are being submitted. So you have to think about not only the future, and that's, again, thinking ahead, poker. What is the hive mind doing? Is everyone grading Cody Bellinger right now? How many of those are going to exist and how much demand will be on him? Are the Dodgers going to win? Is he going to be a key part of it? Et cetera, et cetera. There's so many elements that you need to consider and think of and then make your best decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only thing I was going to say is if it's a PSA 9 of a very recent $10 base card that you got a 9 back with the new way PSA is doing things, I don't think a lot of people are going to send in that card, especially if they see that there's a good chance they're going to get a 9. And I would imagine the pop report would still go up, obviously, but not as high as it would if it's a lower end base card that it looks like they're trying to eliminate. That's very general. It always comes down to that player. And I don't know how old you're talking as well. If you're talking about an older card that has probably already gone through the gambit of the grading companies, or if it's like 2018 Prism and there's a good chance that several more were going to be submitted, several thousand more were going to be submitted and now aren't. But again, supply and demand, and I don't know the demand of whatever card, but supply should go up in PSA 9s, just not as much as if PSA didn't have this newer system where they're kind of punishing these newer lower end cards. Difference between BGS and BCCG. The only difference I know is that it is extremely hard to sell BCCG because I tried, and I just sold one BCCG of a Peyton Manning rookie card, but not for very much. And it does say Beckett on the back. And you might know the answer. I hope you do, because I'm like, level is it? It says Beckett.
BCCG is their low-end grading. So if BGS wanted to acquire GMA, that's essentially what you have with BCCG. So a BCCG 10 is labeled as mint or better, which essentially means that this card is at least a PSA 8, but it might be better in some scenarios. So a 10 there is at least an 8, and that's it. And that's cheaper. The cards aren't as expensive. As you could say, you know, buy the card, not the grade. You can hunt down some nice BCCG 10s, but they're generally 8s or better.
Yeah, I sold a BCCG 10. I remember I bought that card in my first couple of weeks, and I saw it say Beckett. I'm like, that's good, and it's a 10, and that's good. And it's just, all I know is that if it's hard to liquidate, if it's hard to understand, I don't want it. Because if it's hard for me to understand, it's hard for someone else to understand. And in terms of the value and the liquidity of it. And
yes,
I'm all good for BCCG upping the reputation or becoming like a staple in the hobby where people know it, respect it, value it, and it's easy to liquidate. But if it's not just for your own PC and you want to be able to move a card, I'd rather have it raw. Because if I see these other companies, if I see GMA, VMA awards, whatever, I'm going to look at the card and I'm going to put in an offer that's equivalent to a raw card that I see in that condition, because I don't know what HMA 10 is or any of that stuff. So until they've proven to be a staple, a foundational company in the hobby where other people respect it and will be willing to buy and sell it, I should steer away.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's see here. Brandon, appreciate it, man. This is a good one right here. Is your investing seasonal with most buying during the off season? What's your thought on that first, Chris?
The market is cyclical, and I'm just looking again for catalysts. So of course you're going to have seasonal catalysts like the trade, free agency or whatever, Hall of Fame announcements, the next season starting and the hype for that. It's not so much that I'm buying specifically during the off season. I'm just looking for things that are going to move the market and then trying to exploit those things in a situation where other people aren't, like you were talking about earlier, they aren't focusing on this right now. I want to play it ahead. And the way that works out is that you end up with a lag at first. So if you started doing it today, you might not get to your first catalyst for 5 months. But once you've been doing it, it overlaps over time. So cards that I bought a year ago suddenly become sleeper, popping off, and I get to sell those, and I've got more lined up. So, it starts with the cycle, and then you just keep going with it.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, because I love the idea of seasonal investing. And with Halloween coming up, I was going to do a video on Halloween costumes and how if you buy a Halloween costume in October, you pay $50. But if you buy a Halloween costume in November or December, it's $4. And if you own a Halloween costume store, you're not buying your stuff right before Halloween. You're buying it throughout the year, knowing that you'll have your payday then. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen in terms of injuries and player performance, but just the hype before a season, we've seen it so much just in the last couple months of the hype before playoffs, before NFL, who is supposed to be good. Just the idea of buying who is supposed to be good the next year, 4 months, 5 months early, means that there's a good chance that card will go up in value before there's even a play, before there's the snap of a football or a tip-off. And I love that, because that means I can buy up a lot now, which I'm buying a lot of basketball now for next year and for pre-holiday spending. Because another thing with seasonal is, remember, time of the month. People don't have money towards the end of the month. That saying, people run out of money quicker than they run out of month. And that's true. It's like, okay, got the bills, rent's coming up. But after that, mid-month, second week of the month, I got some extra disposable income. I could put it towards cards. So part of my rationale is also the person buying the card. Do they have the money right now? If they don't, then there's a good chance that that's a good card to buy, because I'm not going against all these people with money. I want to make sure the time I'm buying, there's a good chance others don't have the money right now or don't have the interest. Because if it's 0 for 2, I want to buy. If they have the money and the interest, I want to sell.
That plays into that. They might also be the ones selling to you because they need the money because they ran out of it at the end of the month.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
To your point about the Halloween stuff, I always try to suggest to people, you guys can see some Masters of the Universe, records, all that shit. get into other markets that you enjoy. If you can pick another 3 or 4 markets, Halloween costumes are easy. You go to garage sales, you see a Halloween costume in good condition, you're going to find that for $2. You can haggle them down to 50 cents if you want, or buy it all and get a bulk deal, and then just put them on eBay. And yeah, you got to put them in a big box or whatever, but the ROI is nuts. Same thing with vinyl records. You can get them for $1 at garage sales. You can buy a whole collection, $50 for 200, and I swear you'll sell them for $15 to $20 a piece. So get into a few markets that you like. It's not just sports cards. You can use the same process, the whole thing. It's just a point A to point B using the money as a tool.
And also, when you have that mindset, it's reinforcing, is this low? Is this high? Would someone pay more for this? What would need to happen for them to pay more? What time of the year? What person would be paying more? And I mean, I just love that thought process, because it all ties together. And I think that's why Zion was one guy I like buying now, because I see on CompC, height of his optic was, I don't know, $130 or raw or something crazy. And I buy it for, I think, $46. I'm like, okay, good. That's a price I'll take, because Christmas is coming up, and then the season's going to start, and then there's a good chance there's going to be a headline about him losing weight or looking good in training camp. And I'm like, okay, so I have a couple reasons where people will have the money, there will be hype, there might be a good headline, and the odds are in my favor that one of those things is going to boost the prices more than drop it further than where it's at.
Right. But, you have a safe floor in that situation. Like your floor, like if you do lose money for some reason, you're not going to lose much versus what you stand to gain.
That's it. It's always that ratio of upside to downside. And that's why even at first I felt so good with low end raw cards, because a $3 Kobe card should not go lower than $3. If I'm paying $3, if that was the price it was listed at in 2019, which might as well be 10 years ago in this hobby, if that's the price it was then, I feel very good about the upside to downside ratio. While if a base card of Kobe was $50, I go, damn, 6 months ago, this was a $10 card. It could definitely go down to $10. I mean, it was there not long ago. There's also a chance it goes up to 200, but there's a pretty good chance it goes down to 25 or 30 or 35. And I feel like that's, something we all learn over time, especially at first. And when we see the market just go up and up, it's always like, well, dude, it's just going to keep going up, and I'll get out before it goes down. If it dips, I'll get out, not knowing that, dude, it's turning already. We don't realize we're in the middle of the turn. But, like someone posted that quote by Warren Buffett, which I love repeating: be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. And if you just remember that throughout life and apply it to a lot of things, it's a great rule of thumb for, okay, a lot of people are selling off, they're getting out of cards, the prices are low, and that's hive mentality, that's herd mentality. But you know what? Everyone's fearful, they're selling off at a loss. Let me buy now. But when prices are going through the roof and they're doubling month after month, that's scary. That people are greedy, I'm fearful, let me sell off.
Yeah, take the profit and move on.
That's it. Okay, I think we got a couple questions here before we head out. I just want to answer. Global sports card investor, selling internationally. I know I do eBay's international global shipping. I think David has it here as well. Any thoughts on selling internationally, Chris?
I think it's great. I think it's good to sell through eBay. That's the way I do it. It just makes it simple for me, and I've never had a problem doing it. And honestly, if, like I said, again, back to other markets, you would be surprised at the American-based collectibles that people in other countries are interested in, and they will pay a premium price for them. Like we just bought at an auction a bunch of McDonald's collectibles, and one of the collectibles was a sign that went in the store, and it was Super Mario Brothers 3. We paid $100 for the entire lot of the McDonald's stuff, and that got almost $200 from a dude in Europe. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And what's really cool, and I'm sure you see this on your station as well, but I'm getting people being like, greetings from Australia, greetings from England, greetings from Costa Rica. And I'm like, and obviously Canada, but it's just like, holy shit, I thought sports cards, baseball cards was a very American thing, and maybe soccer cards internationally. I did not think that this would pick up. But at the same time, we're connected with the internet. Gary Vee speaks all over the country. People all over the world. People love Gary Vee and whatever he has to say. And people love sports. And of course, basketball, soccer, those are the big ones. But it's pretty damn cool to know that it is way beyond just what we see here in the US. Oh yeah, and yeah, for sure. This is definitely Mike Allstott. You got it, Al. All right, guys. I think let me see if there's two more before we head out. I know there's a Lakers game going on, and more importantly, I think my camera's going to die, and I have to piss again. I pissed right before, but I got a small bladder.
And I got cake to eat.
And you got cake to eat, man. That's just melting there. The layers are just melting into each other. I'm like getting dark in the shadow of my hat. Look at that.
Oh my God, it's like the size of my head.
Oh, dude, that's my thing, man. I do intermittent fasting, so when I eat, you do it too?
Yeah. Because I used to do the bulletproof coffee and all that with the butter.
Oh, dude, that was one thing. While I look up another question, I wanted to ask you, dude. You said you mentioned you weighed 600 pounds years ago while you were playing poker online. Can you just tell me a bit about what that was like? And then, more importantly, I love great transformational stories as to what made you transition to who you are now, or what was it that got in your head that this was enough and you were going to change?
Well, at the time, I was going to a bunch of magic conventions, buying and selling magic. And at one point, I stopped doing that, and I got really into the poker, basically full time. And I was in a third floor apartment, and I was just playing poker for like 12 hours a day. I wasn't leaving. I was eating bad food. I was buying like meatball subs with extra cheese on the fries and all kinds of trash. And I got to the point where I literally weighed 600 pounds, and it was difficult to walk. It was just a miserable life. I was suicidally depressed. And I've always been a survivor. I didn't have the best childhood. I've always been just slugging through. And at one point I said, all right, I have to stop this. I'm getting like bloody noses for no reason. I'm about to die. I need to educate myself. I need to make some changes. I need to leave my house. So I was streaming on Twitch TV at the time. And, my friend that I had met through streaming said, well, let me move you to Washington State, because out here you could be close to friends, we get you out of that apartment and everything else. And I educated myself about food. I started eating better. I got on the keto diet. I started doing the intermittent fasting with the butter and the coffee, and then just eating a healthy meal in the evening. And my friend literally flew with his own money out to Worcester, where I lived in Massachusetts, and we rented a U-Haul. I literally just walked out of my apartment after 6 years of staying inside, got in a U-Haul, and drove across the United States to Washington State. And that's where I was before I ended up in Vegas.
That's phenomenal. Okay, I got to ask one more question, because I see here there's questions here, and I want to, obviously we got the game. I want to respect your time as well. Was there a moment during that where something clicked? Was there one specific moment? Was there what went in your head that from the moment before when you were doing what you were to what you needed to do? Anything transformational, or was it just over time?
I think it was just the overtime disgust of seeing myself or feeling the way that I did and wanting to get out of it, but then being emotionally depressed again. You give in to that emotion. And what was my release? It was not going out and finding chicks at a bar. It was eating food that satisfied that craving so that I could stay in that deep, disgusting cycle. And, it went on from there. I hurt my back trying to pet my cat one time, and I couldn't get out of bed for like 2 weeks. I was like pooping in a bowl. It was disgusting. And I said, enough of this. So yeah, it was just over time. You're just done, and it's time for a change. And everybody doesn't have the power to make that change, they think, but you do. It's in you. You just have to literally take it day by day and make a better decision. So logical over emotional thinking would be the core of it.
Dude, that's amazing. Congratulations. I love stories like that. And you earned it. And, obviously we talk about sports cards, we talk about investing, but this is one little facet of life. And I've said this before, I don't want sports cards to be the only joy someone has in their life. I don't want this to be such an escape because everything else sucks. I want this to be something that enriches our life, because we have a full life. We're pursuing other things. We have a spouse, or we're dating, or we're just out in the world. I want that. I want that for everyone. I want that for you. And I feel like that's the way that we can be in this hobby in a healthy manner and use it appropriately as a tool for healthy escapism, side hustle, money, whatever it is, without it being the only positive in our life. So I really want to end it right there, just based on how beautiful of a story that was. And I see a couple questions here. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going to have to end it.
We gotta go.
Good. That was too good. Definitely follow Chris on his station, VegasFinds777, as well as, say it one more time, other places that you can find you?
Name the Merciless 93 on Twitch, and you guys can find the links in any one of my YouTube videos for any of that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of you guys for joining us. Chris, thanks so much for the insight as well as the inspiration, and I'll see y'all next video.
Have a good one.